Thank you so much for joining us online today. We so appreciate you checking out this message. We hope you enjoy it and are inspired to live more and more like Jesus Christ by His grace. If you would like to support the ministries of Rancho, you can do so at rancho.tv/giving. Set up a giving profile and a reoccurring gift. We'd sure appreciate that. Enjoy.
We are at the last week of our Life Plan series. It's been a long series. It's about, I think, 9 weeks. We extended it because so many people were giving so much feedback about how this is impacting their lives, that they're taking notes, digitally or on paper, and they're making these decisions about their life direction that are having profound impact. So we kept adding some subjects, and we are here at the very end today. Now, throughout this time, we've been using the metaphor of a journey toward a beautiful destination, almost like a hike, right? A hike through the forest towards this beautiful destination that we could imagine, When we are in our elderly years, when we're in our sunset years, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And to imagine that now. In my elderly years, the sunset years, am I surrounded by family, surrounded by love, looking back on my life with very few regrets, thinking, you know what, I think I might have made this world just a little bit better because I was here. I poured something into the next generation, my kids and my grandkids. That's a very satisfying end of the journey. And to think of that now, even when we're young. And then along the way to make some decisions that gets us to that spot. And so we've been talking about these plans that we can make. And here are some of the things we've talked about. We've talked about a life purpose, life values, the people we do life with, a family life plan, place number 1, a work life plan, place number 2, and a social life plan, place number 3. And then last week, Steve talked about imagining the second half of life. What does that look like when we go from our younger years of, full of energy and plans and vision, and then we kind of cross that, crest. And I think I'm like on that crest, leaning over to that second half of life, right? And where you become more of a sage and more of a mentor, and you're leaving things for the next generation. Today, we're going to close our time with a vision of a life generously lived. A life generously lived. That's the vision today. And when we talk about generosity, we're talking about a definition that goes something like this. It's really simple. Generous is to be helpful, kind, and giving to meet the needs of others. Very simple. And the vision today is to live this kind of life. I want to be a helpful person. I want to be a kind person, and I want to give to meet the needs of others. Now, over the course of these 9 weeks, we've talked about various ways to be generous, particularly with our time. And so for many of these weeks, we've talked about how to invest time in family, invest time in people. We've talked about how to invest our talents. We are wired in unique ways, and how can we give those talents away for the betterment of others, for the betterment of the cause of Christ. Today, we're going to focus on financial generosity, but beyond that, we're going to focus on a financial plan. So we're not going to just talk about giving and donations. That will come at the very, very end. We're going to broaden this out, and we're going to talk about 3 principles of a financial plan. And then we're going to talk about 3 habits of a financial plan that will free our entire lives. We're not just talking about money and dollars and cents. We're talking about living free because we have a financial plan that makes sense, because we are employing some habits in our life that are going to avoid us being kind of crushed financially, to live free, and then the opportunity to live generously. So 3 principles about generosity, then 3 habits of generosity, and we will be done for the day. You ready to go? Yeah. All right, we're excited. Here we go. Number 1, generosity is exceedingly unnatural. Generosity is not natural. The natural human condition is to be selfish. The natural human condition is to focus on ourselves. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I'm not coming down on that. I'm just saying that's the natural state of the human condition. And it's completely understandable. And it's completely necessary because God wired our brains to survive, which is a good thing, right? I think we would all admit survival is a good thing. And if our brains are wired for survival, that means our brains are wired to look after ourselves. So we're not going to do anything, hopefully, that's going to be, dumb or harmful. We have to look out for ourselves, our own needs, kind of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do I have food? Do I have water? Do I have relationship? Am I loved? Do I belong? These are the things that we are wired to look out for. We have to look out for ourselves. If we're not looking out for ourselves, we have no capacity to look out for others. The problem is that human nature tends to stop there. Human nature tends to stop looking out for ourselves and looking out for our clan. Let's go tribal here. Way back hundreds of thousands of years ago, when humankind were in tribes and in caves, the human brain is wired to protect ourselves and defend ourselves, so we're going to surround ourselves with our clan, our people. And this clan exists to protect ourselves from the clan next door. And so we become tribal to protect ourselves. That's how the human brain is wired. It's wired to be self-centered. It's wired to be self-protected, looking out for us and looking out for our clan. When we stay there, just look out for us, just look out for our clan, we rob ourselves of the journey of becoming more and more like God. Because as Evan said earlier, God exists to serve. Jesus came to serve and to give his life. Jesus is the model of generosity, right? And so the more we just look after us and our clan and our people, the less we are aligned with the heart of Jesus. Here's the way it's put in 1 John 2. For the world offers a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, a pride in our achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father, but from this world. In other words, just from the natural world. Our natural brains, our natural DNA, our natural wiring says, look out for yourself. Look out for your own cravings. Look out for your own stuff. But that's not the way of Jesus. Jesus gave his life, and I don't just mean to the cross, although we'll get to that later. I mean his entire life, certainly looking out for himself. There were times where he had to leave the crowds and he had to rest. There were times where he had to leave the crowds and he had to eat. There were times he had to leave the crowds and he just had to pray. Jesus was about taking care of himself. He was a human being, but also as the fullness of God, he lived his life generously, helpful and kind and giving to meet the needs of others. That's why Jesus says, I'm leaving you with one law. And thankfully, he left us with just one thing to think about. Love your neighbor as yourself. Right? That's the great commandment. Mark 12, love your neighbor as yourself. What's the beauty of this verse? Jesus wants us to love ourselves. He wants us to, look at ourselves in the mirror and go, that is a specimen. That's pretty cool. That's the image of God right there. That's a creation of God. This person, you, are an amazing miracle of God. Love yourself, take care of yourself, make sure you are healthy in body and mind and soul and emotionally and socially and spiritually, right? Take care of yourself. But Jesus says also love your neighbor as you love yourself. Don't think of ourselves as any better than our neighbor. Don't think of our clan as any better than the next clan, right? Live as though the entire world is our neighbor. That's what Jesus taught with the parable of the Good Samaritan, that our neighbor is everyone. 8 billion neighbors on this planet. It is exceedingly difficult to get our minds there, but we can. The image that crossed my mind this week was of you're in an airplane and the flight attendant says, hey, when the mask drops, what do? You put it on yourself first and then you take care of others. I kind of love that. It's kind of like the great commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. Take care of yourself. Make sure you're in good shape. When we're in good shape and when we're taking care of ourselves, we then have the capacity to look to our neighbor and put that oxygen mask not just on our own kids, but 8 billion people in the world. We get a chance to value and treasure them all. Generosity, however, is exceedingly hard. So generosity requires a whole new nature. It's like a new heart, right? Generosity requires a whole new nature. And this is tough because we have the human nature wired to look out for us and our clan. And then you have what the Bible calls the Spirit of Christ. And in the book of Galatians, particularly Galatians chapter 5, it contrasts the flesh, the fleshly nature, which is ourself, and the spiritual nature, which is the Spirit of God, the Spirit of Christ. So Galatians 5 goes back and forth. Here's the human nature, here's the nature of the Spirit of Christ. Galatians 5:25 says, since we are living by the Spirit of Christ, let's follow the Spirit's leading in every part of our lives. Let's not focus on ourselves. Let's not be conceited or provoke one another or be jealous of one another. The fruit of the Spirit, or the life of the Spirit, looks out generously for each other in love and in kindness and in help. And so for each of us, myself included, as I put this message together, as I live my own life day to day, I want to be consciously aware as much as I can, where am I being self-centered and where am I being generous? And to think through that really throughout the day. So, you're in a business meeting, and am I really listening to somebody, or am I just kind of pushing my own agenda? Do I think I'm the one that has all the right answers in this room? Or do I respect other people enough to say, well, you might have something good to say, I want to hear from you? Where am I just living for my success, or where am I living for the success of others? I want you to get credit here. I want you to thrive here. I want you to get your way here. I want you to succeed here, right? In your own family life, where do you just want your way done and everybody's got to, bow to your will? Or where do you say, hey, I want my spouse to thrive today, and I want my spouse to get what he or she wants today, or I want my kids to get what they want today? It's a whole lifestyle. Am I living through the lens of selfishness or living through the lens of generosity? That requires a new heart. And then third, we can live out the generous nature of Jesus. That's the beauty of the nature of Christ, is we get to live out the life of Christ. So yes, generosity is exceedingly difficult, and yes, it requires a whole new heart, but we can have the heart of Christ and live out the heart of Christ by following Jesus. And so I want to encourage you, if you want this vision of living a life of generosity, read about the life of Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You know how it goes around Rancho, right? We don't encourage people to read the Bible cover to cover. You can get into a lot of trouble. But if you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John to start, that's the life and ministry of Jesus. And when you're done reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and just cycle those Gospels. Cycle the life and ministry and teaching of Jesus, because what you'll see is the full heart of God on display. And what you'll see is generosity through Jesus. He found and befriended the lost and the lonely. He accepted those who were outcast and rejected. He welcomed those who were judged. He healed the sick. He fed the hungry, and he mobilized thousands to be generous to the world around them. Not just by talking about it, but by doing things, giving their resources, giving their time, giving their talents, their treasure to meet the needs of others. And then ultimately, the death of Jesus is an act of generosity. Because here is Jesus 3 years into his ministry, and he is being generous to the world around him, and so thousands of people are flocking to Jesus. He's showing off the generosity of God, the love of God, the help of God, the kindness of God. And so thousands are coming to Jesus. And so all the worldly powers of religion and government are wanting to crush Jesus. They want him dead. And Jesus had a choice in Luke 19. He's standing over a rock overlooking Jerusalem. And the entire world says, Jesus, don't go to Jerusalem. Protect yourself. If you go to that city, the religious authorities will be there and the governmental authorities will be there, and they will murder you. They want you dead. You threaten their power because of your generosity. And Jesus says, I came to serve them. He wept over the city and said, I came for the city. And he moved into the city of Jerusalem, and it cost him his life. 1 week later, he's on a cross. The cross is this ultimate act of generosity that Jesus was so interested in serving the world around him. He said, I will serve this world at all cost, and it cost him his life. Now, Jesus, of course, rose from the dead, as we celebrated in that awesome new third song, as we will celebrate on Easter. And Jesus says, I'm going to give you my spirit. Yes, I'm not here in the flesh. I am not here in the body, but I'm going to give you my spirit. I'm going to give you a relationship with me, and you get to continue the ministry of Jesus. We get to continue the ministry of Jesus. So Jesus tells this parable. It's a simple parable in Luke chapter 12. It's a parable about a boss basically leaving employees to do some work. And this is Jesus saying, hey, I'm the boss, by the way. Only one head's going to wear that crown. That's Jesus. He's well aware. Jesus is the boss. He knows he's about to be crucified, and he will rise again from the dead and be with the Father. But he is going to leave this place to us. Now, hear me here. This is big time stuff. Jesus, the King of Kings, is leaving this world to us, to our care. I'm not here in the body, but I'm going to guide you by my spirit. I'm not here in the body, but you have my word. I'm not here in the body, but you have each other. And I want you to continue my work. I want you, as we say, to advance my cause through mercy, justice, and love. I want you to be as generous to the world as I have been to this world. I don't want you to kind of shrink into selfishness and clan, and this is my family, and this is my religion, and this is my nation, and everybody else is less than. Everybody is your neighbor. Everybody gets treated equally, and we are generous to everyone. That is what Jesus commanded us to do. And he says this in Luke 12. To us, who are left here on earth, to steward the work of Christ, be dressed for service and keep your lamps burning as though you were waiting for the master to return. The master was crucified, risen, and ascended to be with the Father. and we are here with his Spirit, with his word, and with each other. Now what are we gonna do? Jesus says, while I'm away, be dressed for service and keep that lamp burning. Well, what does dressed for service mean? The closest I could come up with is if you're in the military, and I'm gonna probably butcher a lot of words, so all you in the military are gonna go, this guy. Dressed for service, right? You got your formals, you've got your, you got your, military gear, camos. What am I doing here? You're dressed for service, right? And how you are dressed means that you are ready for a certain task. And Jesus says, be dressed for service. Be dressed for service. We are here to serve our neighbor. While Christ, the servant, is gone, we are here to serve our neighbor whenever and wherever we can, with whatever God has given us. And then it says, keep your lamps burning. That just means keep hope alive, for lack of a better phrase. Keep that light on. Even when it gets dark, that light is on. And that light in the window, right, says to the world that no matter how bad it gets, there is hope. And I am here to serve. And I'm here to bring light in the darkness. That's our attitude, following the generosity of Jesus, being generous to the world around us. That parable goes on in Luke chapter 12 with a very familiar teaching. When someone has been given much, much will be expected in return. And when someone has been entrusted with much, even more will be expected. Right? To whom much is given, much is expected. Have you heard that, right? We have a ton. United States of America, Temecula Marietta Valley, Rancho Church, we have a ton. We have a lot. You compare what we have to the average plight of the average person on this earth. We've got food in our mouths, we've got roofs over our heads, we've got clothes on our back. Most of us, I would say 99.99% of us, do not have to worry about what we're having for dinner tonight. And if you are worried about what you're having for dinner tonight, we've got about 100 places in town that will help you tonight, right? So we have a lot. And Jesus just makes this kind of obvious bit of teaching. It's like an invitation. So it's not this heavy-handed, you better or else. It's an invitation that says, hey, listen, if you've been blessed with a lot, because of where you were born, because of the family that you were raised in, because of the hard work that you had based on the opportunities that you were given, just understand we have a lot. And the generous Jesus says to us, as God has been generous to you, be generous to others. To whom much is given, much is expected. And that is not, again, a heavy-handed threat. It is the invitation of Matthew 10:8. Give as freely as you have received. And just sit with that for a bit. The invitation is that simple. And I would say the invitation is that soft, meaning it's up to us. Give as freely as you've received. We've received so many material blessings. We've received the spiritual blessing of God, his love, his grace, his forgiveness. As Evan said earlier, we are children of God. All this blessing. As we've received, freely give. That's the invitation. So those are the principles. It is exceedingly difficult to be generous. Generosity requires a new nature, and we can live out the very nature of Christ. Now we're going to end with just some practical financial planning tools. For some of you who are really good with your money and people have been, pouring into your life, just good principles, this is going to be like 101, got it, nailed. That's probably a small percentage of us. For those of you who are young, please, I'm begging you, if you are young, pay close attention, because if these 3 biblical principles about financial planning, if you can practice these when you are young, and I'm telling you, young people, if you are under, let's just say, gosh, I'm 55, so if you're 55 and under, you're young. Put these things to work, you will not regret it. Some of the stuff comes from the book Kingdom Builders by a friend of mine, Ryan Bork. There's also other great resources out there that have biblical financial principles as well. This is not about guilt, this is no weird stuff, this is just solid principles based on Matthew 6:21. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. This is kind of a law of humanity. Where you put your money is where your heart goes. So this financial plan part is not about dollars and cents and what dollars and cents can do. That's important. But what's most important is our heart. Our heart tends to follow our money. I'll give you a quick example. I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, I invested my first dollar in a company, probably a little bit too late, but I invested a little bit in Apple computers. I started getting a few bucks, extra, and we'll talk about that in a bit, and got a few bucks together and purchased some Apple stock. I'm telling you, my heart went to Apple computer big time. I'm like, Steve Jobs, you better not screw this up, right? You got like $10 of mine. But just when we start investing in things, where the dollars go, our heart goes. When I was 20-ish, 21 years old, I started giving to Rancho Church here, just a little bit. But when I gave a little bit to Rancho Church, I'm like, I got real invested, just as an attender and a volunteer here. And I started putting some money into Rancho Church, just a little bit, tiny little bit, right? It's like, I'm more invested in Rancho Church than ever, right? Really want to see what's going on here and feeling a part of this. And so this financial plan is really a heart plan. A financial plan is really a heart plan more than it is what can actually be done with actual dollars. So here we go. 3 things that'll go quick. Number 1, young people, I'm telling you, every eye on debt is the devil. Debt is the devil. And I want us, that's kind of, it's hyperbole, it's a lot, but I want us to understand the weight of debt is extreme. Proverbs 22 says, the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is a slave to the lender. One of the things that Jenny and I wanted to do with our kids from the time they were very young, and I'm talking about like 7 or 8 years old, is do not get into debt. Do not get into debt. And I'm telling you, at 7 years old, my kids were already trying to negotiate debt. Oh, I know Christmas is coming up, but can I just have it in September and then Christmas will be the payback? It's like, you're already thinking as a 7-year-old, that's debt negotiation. It's like, no, debt is the devil. When our kids turn 18 years old, what do they get in the mail? About 1,000 credit card offers. Because banks know if you can get a teenager in debt by about $500, they own you for the rest of your life. The rest of your life. And so the whole system is about getting us in debt and dangling all the goodies, the newest, the latest, the next model. And, American companies are just built to come up with the next model, with the next fancy gadget. So we go, oh, my car's like 18 months old. It's got irrelevant tech. I got to get new car tech. And I'm going to get into more debt to get new car tech. I mean, it's like the system is built for debt. I'll just give you a tiny example. So we did raise our kids with debt is the devil. And so they had an option, right? They get jobs. They go to school, they get their degree, they get jobs. They can afford a car loan, totally, as young 20s. They can afford a car loan. And every one of my kids right now are driving beaters. They can afford a car loan, but they're driving beaters. I'm talking like 2005 Kia beaters. They got to go on the Kia brothers stuff to make sure the stuff doesn't get jacked, or whatever that is. Anyway, they're driving beaters, so they're not saddled with a car loan. Here's how the math works. If my kids got their first job and got a car loan, the average car loan over 10 years is $100,000. Auto debt over 10 years is $100,000. First 10 years of my kids' adult life in their career, they're going to be $100,000 ahead because they're driving crappy cars. You know what? It gets them to work every single day. If the air conditioner breaks, they get it fixed. And when it gets fixed, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than a car payment. So now, hey, listen, we have a car loan. So I'm not saying, hey, it's all bad. But if it's stretching you, and if it's causing you to not do the good things that we're going to talk about, right? These are things that we've really got to consider. Debt is the devil. So if at all possible, do not get into consumer debt. It's pretty well understood that if you want to buy a house, a mortgage is probably the only way to go for 99% of people. But the stuff that's the killer is the credit cards. The stuff that's the killer is the personal loans, the consumer loans, and auto loans can get you in huge, huge trouble. Debt is the devil. The entire U.S. economy is built on debt. We are $36 trillion in debt right now. By the end of 2025, we will be $38 trillion in debt. And there's a whole world going on about government spending. I don't know where all that's going to go. I mean, every day is quite an adventure. I don't know if anybody ever is going to get this country, right-sided. But there's a cliff coming. I don't know when, I don't know how, but 200% of GDP in debt is absolutely unacceptable. And it's uniquely an American phenomenon, not just in terms of our country, but in terms of individual families. Americans spend 106% of their income annually. Where is that going? You earn $100, you spend $106. Where does that go? The average American family has $19,000 in credit card debt and personal debt. We are a slave to debt. Here are the credit card trends over time. This is the total amount that Americans owe in credit cards. 2009, you see that gray zone right there? That's the Great Recession. At the Great Recession, we're like, oh, shoot, this is terrible. I'm a mess. I got to control my spending. We control our spending for a half an hour, and then it goes right back up. Then the trend line goes up to 2021. That's COVID. It's like, ooh, I don't have an emergency thing. I'm a mess with debt. We straighten some things up for a bit. Half an hour later, right back at it. We are buried in personal credit card debt as families. I feel like I'm lecturing, and I hate that. Just when you're hearing me, like, you're lecturing today, just go, we're all trying to help. All right, what to do about it? Write this down, make a mental note. This is not rocket science. Stop spending. Stop spending. Now, I know this sounds kind of condescending and this sounds overly obvious, but if you read any book on financial planning, financial peace, this friend of mine's book, it's like, we got to stop the addiction of spending, right? We've got our TV is like 8 years old, and there's like this draw. It's like, our TV's 8 years old. That's unacceptable. Why? We still watch TV on an 8-year-old TV. And so can we afford a new TV? Yes, but why do we need a TV? We don't. So we're just gonna keep that TV in until it breaks, right? Why buy a new TV? That's perfectly fine. It might be 1.5 inches thick, and the new ones are like 3/4 of an inch thick. That would cost me about $2,000 or whatever the number is. I have no idea what Costco is, but it's like, I don't need to spend $2,000 for a 3/4 of an inch thinner TV, right? Stop spending. Second, sell what you can. Sell what you can. Now, this is a Dave Ramseyism that it may not be for everybody, but let's just take the auto loan thing. If you've got a car that has a massive auto loan, or you got multiple auto loans, and you wanted to get free, Dave Ramsey has this thing, and he gets kind of bent out of shape about it. He says, sell the car, turn it in. You don't need it. If you got a big car loan and you want to live freer, sell the car, turn it back in. You don't need it. And buy a beater. Buy a beater. There was a time around Rancho where some of these principles were really catching traction just in small groups and things. We weren't even preaching about it up here. We rarely talk about money up here, I promise you, like every 3 years. But people were driving just like trashers. And there's like, that's my Dave Ramsey car. And we all knew what that means. It's like, okay, you make a good living, you could buy whatever car you want, but you're choosing not to. And they sold their cars and they bought beaters, and they're living free. They're excited about it and proud of their car. So what you can. Put every available dollar either into the smallest debt or the highest interest debt. So another example. Let's say you eat out a lot. You eat out quite a bit. I will tell you, just to be honest, my wife and I 2 years ago said, I think we're eating out a little too much. We went through the process of adding up how much it cost us to eat out every month. And I just fell over like, they had to revive me. It was an astonishingly embarrassing amount that I will not even tell you. And I'm like, and we don't eat out. It didn't seem like a lot, but oh my gosh, you add up all these little things, and it's just like, it's a line item in our budget it's like, no way can that happen. And so if, for example, you're eating out quite a bit, these are one of the things that can be pulled back. And when you pull back, and let's just say you pull back from eating out, I guarantee you're probably gonna find between $100 and $800. Pull back eating out, you can take that money and then start knocking off your debt. and maybe knock off the smallest debt first. Let's say you have a credit card of $3,000. Take every available dollar that you save from Starbucks or eating out or whatever, put every dollar like it's a life mission toward that small debt, and you'll see over time, that thing gets paid off. The satisfaction you'll feel, it's like, I'm free from that card. And then you take that payment and that money and you take it to the next card and the next consumer debt and that next auto loan. And now all of a sudden, you've got fewer payments. And if you have fewer payments, you have more what? Money. And this thing then you're starting to live free and light and everything becomes easier. Debt is the devil. I don't want to be too late, so I got to go fast here. Save and invest. Save and invest. Ecclesiastes 5:10. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. So basically there's a whole game of just chasing after more and more and more. So I want to give you two, I think, very, very helpful tips. Live 20 to 25% below your means. Some of you are like, no way that's possible. And I will tell you, yes way that's possible. Because from our own experience, we didn't always live 20 to 25% below our means. In fact, when my wife and I were very young, we were very poor. We lived actually below the poverty line. We drove our tires until the metal showed. We had Jenny's aunt helped us with groceries every month. I mean, that's where we were. We were not living by this rule. So if things are tight for you right now, I totally understand this seems impossible, but it's not. We just made the decision little by little. As income rises a little bit, you get a little bit of raise, you get a little bit of promotion, you just don't go spending it all. You keep your lifestyle here and then your income goes up and all of a sudden you got margin and you're watching your debt and you're paying off your debt and then you got more free cash flow and then you can start investing. Now, if you are living by this rule, which is pure gold and nobody ever regrets this, nobody ever says, darn it, I saved too much money. Nobody ever has said that. So this is a zero regret rule. This means you will live in a house 25% below what you can afford. You'll drive a car 25% below what you can afford. You'll eat at restaurants 25% below what you can afford. You'll go to vacations 25% below what you can afford. And that sacrifice, which is tiny, brings huge freedom, and allows for some generosity to emerge. So here's the 75-15-10 rule. There's all kinds of rules online. You look at the financial percentage rules, and this is just one I picked out. And I like this, and Jenny and I live by this. That means you live on 75% of your post-tax income. Your post-tax income typically is the check you get, your paycheck. You live on 75% of that. That's yours. House, car, meals, whatever, 75% is yours. 15% of that goes to long-term investing. That's your retirement. That's just, you're buying ETFs, your stocks, bond, whatever you want to, whoever your advisor, whatever you want to do with that. 15% is long-term investing. 10%, short-term cash on hand and donations. So this is how Jenny and I live. We've done this for years, and the freedom that comes as a result of that is enormous. And it leaves room for healthy generosity. So the final point is give some away. Give some away. Now, when Jenny and I were young and poor, we were like, we wanted to give. We wanted to give to Rancho Church. Rancho Church had poured a lot into us, and we wanted to give back. But we couldn't literally buy groceries or tires. We just made a decision to put a tiny amount, and I think the number was $20. If Jenny was here, she'd correct me on the spot. It was some tiny amount. I think it's just $20 we're gonna give to the church every week. And we couldn't afford that $20, but that $20 wasn't gonna break us every month. Nor was that $20 gonna radically change the course of Rancho Church's history, right? The board wasn't looking for our $20 every single month, but it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the money that we gave, because that $20 we could manage without, with some help. That $20 was not radically altering the course of Rancho Church, but it was about the heart that says, I'm just going to start giving. We as a family are just gonna start giving. And then over time, income rises, financial things, square away, you get more margin, you're saving, you're investing, you're donating. And then now my wife and I are privileged and pleased. It's like our greatest pleasure to have put probably hundreds of thousands of dollars into Rancho Church now over the course of being here for 40 some years. Haven't done the math, but we were able to invest in this place over time, being able to say, okay, we're here now, we're poor now, Aunt Marilyn's buying groceries, and those tires are bald. But $20 now, just little by little, generosity starts rising. And then now all of a sudden a financial plan starts happening. You're investing, you're saving, we're generous. And so to be able to say, I helped build this place. I, with my generosity, help fuel the ministries here. And then when something pops up like One Enchanted Evening or a special project, to be able to say, you know what, there's some margin now to generosity and we can give, and just it's our pleasure to give because we've worked a plan from when we were young and poor, literally young and poor. Give. Give what you can. Don't give irresponsibly. And I have 2 suggestions, and we're done. These are totally biased suggestions. Rancho.tv/giving and missionhope.com. This place does wonderful things with the gospel of Jesus. I'm telling you from experience, having been raised in this church, ministered by this church, and then ministering through this church, this place is worth investing in. And we have them looking at our board right now. I mean, there's like half of our board is here, and these men and women, they pour over every detail and every dollar. You can give here with confidence. Mission Hope, we started in 2009 during the Great Recession, and we were struggling as a church because nobody was giving during the Great Recession. In our school, everybody was keeping their tuition dollars. And we made the decision, in our own financial crisis, we are launching Mission Hope. And we still have the privilege of helping to operate it today, and we give generously toward it. And so as a church family, you can give towards missionhope.com with confidence, helping to feed and house thousands every single month right here in our own valley. For some of you, it might just be $20. Just get started. For some of you, it might be, okay, I have a giving plan, and now's the time to see that expand a little bit. And let's start widening our generosity, not just for what the dollars can do, which are important, but to change our heart into the heart of Christ. Let's pray. God, I confess that talking about money in church it just makes me nervous. There's been so much abuse and even scandal in your church over the centuries. And there's a grief behind that. It just tarnishes the name of Jesus when people use the name of Jesus to make money for themselves and live lifestyles that are lavish or even take advantage of people. But God, would you not allow that to erode our heart toward the heart of generosity? As Jesus was generous, we want to be generous. As Jesus left us to steward this world and to serve, to be dressed for service and to keep the lamp lit, God, I pray that we would be hopeful in the future of this world, a future that is built on love, a future that is built on generosity, a future that is built on the kindness and the grace of Jesus Christ. God, would you allow us to be wise in our financial planning, that no matter where we start now, if we are deeply underwater, give us a vision for making small changes now that can result in freedom and generosity later. For those here that are very generous, thank you for all that is accomplished through their gifts, through their giving. And God, thank you most for your grace through Jesus. In his name we pray, amen.